What's up, everybody, and welcome to another edition of AGR's Pop Culture Reviews. Okay, so after completely ignoring everybody for about a week, I finally got to sit down and see both seasons of Daredevil. This review is actually long overdue. You know, one of the dangers of binge watching on Netflix is that sometimes you feel a grind set in when you're watching these shows. Not with Daredevil. So I have to admit, Daredevil wasn't exactly one of my most favorite Marvel characters, but after watching the show, I think I got a better sense of what Daredevil's all about, and I really like it. It's actually a really awesome show. So this is actually two reviews in one, and what we're going to do is we're going to get into Season 1, and then talk about some of the great changes that happened in Season 2. So Daredevil is an original Netflix series that tells the story of Matt Murdock. Matt Murdock is essentially a lawyer by day and a vigilante by night, if that wasn't paradoxical enough. I'm sure many of you in the comic book community already know the origin of Daredevil, but for the purposes of this review, I think it's important to get into his backstory. Essentially, Matt Murdock was a child who had a freak accident which blinded him. And, in true comic book fashion, rather than killing him or severely injuring him, it gives him superpowers of sorts. Actually, it gives him heightened abilities, so his other senses are really acute. You know, I really gotta applaud Netflix for taking bold new steps and really exploring these characters. And I really gotta say, this show is gritty as shit. So if you remember watching Daredevil with Ben Affleck, yeah, this is not that. Now, unlike other iterations of live-action Daredevils, this show is steeped in a lot more realism, and it's really the strength of the show. Now, don't get me wrong, it stays very true to the lore and the original source material, without being too hokey. Now, there are two really great examples of this, the first being the fact that they don't have Daredevil making these astronomical leaps across rooftops. Instead, the show decides to showcase a lot more parkour movements in the action sequences, and this is really great. The other example is definitely in the fight scenes. Oh my god, they're amazing. Now here's the thing, there's a real art form to taking something that is obviously choreographed and make it look like it's not obviously choreographed, and the show does this beautifully. Because it makes the character a lot more organic and definitely a lot more believable. Most, if not all of the fight sequences in the show are exceptionally brutal. But it goes beyond just the impressive visuals. I mean, you really see how grueling these fight sequences are, and it takes a toll on not only Daredevil, but also the people he's fighting, and they get fatigued, they slow down. You know, one other thing that really impressed me about these fight sequences is some of them go on for several minutes. Now, for you and I, it's not a big deal, but in a shot, going for several minutes is really impressive, and it's one continuous shot, they don't stop, there's no editing, and that's truly remarkable. Now, the storyline in Season 1 is really good, even though I initially thought that the writing was a little too Sorkin-esque and kind of cheesy.
I don't see the city anymore.
Then, however, I got into Season 2, and I realized what they were doing, and there was a reason for the way they were writing the show. One of the things that have been missing in comic book movies in general is the time needed to really flush out these characters. That ability to internalize what they're going through and their struggles is something that this Netflix series does very well. In that respect, I was able to reflect on the writing in Season 1 and how it changed for Season 2, and I got a much better appreciation of what they were trying to do with the characters. Okay, so we all know that the strength of a show is really in the performances by the actors, so let's talk about performances. Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock / Daredevil was perfect in this role, and he was completely believable in both characters. I really like the way Charlie Cox played this character, and you can really see the anguish that he has between being a lawyer and being a vigilante, and where he fits within the great scheme of that. It's really great. Deborah Ann Wall plays Karen Page, and she really represents the emotional center for the show. The way we're initially introduced to this character is very interesting and something I haven't seen in shows in a long time, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but there's a lot more to this character than we realize. Eldon Henson plays Foggy Nelson. Foggy is Matt's college roommate and also went to law school together with him. Foggy really represents Matt's moral compass, and there's a few times in this show where Matt really blurs a line between vigilante and villain. One of the reasons I really like Foggy is because he's a really integral character in Matt's life, and he could have been played in the cliche style kind of comic relief character, but he wasn't. There's a lot more depth to Foggy than we realize. Now, I know the show is called Daredevil, but at times it really should be called The Wilson Fisk Show. Dear God, Vincent D'Onofrio gives one of the most chilling and mesmerizing performances I've ever seen in a character. Wilson Fisk is absolutely terrifying, and when I tell you that you're never sure what this character is gonna do or when he's gonna flip out, I mean, you never really know. Rosario Dawson also reprises her role as Claire Temple, and what I really like about this character is it really gives depth and expands the Marvel Universe within the show. If you remember my review of Jessica Jones, Claire also makes an appearance in that show, and evidently she's become the patron saint of curing superhumans or metahumans. It was a nice Easter egg, and I loved all the references. And this segues nicely into what I really liked about Season 2. They really expand on the Marvel Universe as we're introduced to the Punisher and Elektra. We also see a very subtle difference in the writing, and it's really to the compliment of the show. If Season 1 was merely flirting with the ideas or themes of justice, morality, reciprocity, and revenge, Season 2 really kicks it into high gear and throws it in your face, sometimes very brutally. I don't want to spoil anything for you, but I will say that there's one scene between the Punisher and Daredevil that, man, really made me second guess myself in terms of morality and what I would have done in that situation. Overall, Daredevil is an amazing series, and I'm really impressed with the way Netflix is handling the superhero characters. In all honesty, this series has really given me a greater appreciation for the character of Daredevil.
Good and evil.
Alright, so that's my official review on the Netflix original series, Daredevil. As always, I thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next AGR's Pop Culture Reviews.
We're gonna make a difference. I know it doesn't feel like it sometimes, but we are.
You're blind, but you see so much.